My name is Brian Wish. I'm an entrepreneur, CEO, and pathfinder. If I've learned anything in life, it's that self-discovery is a critical part of living intentionally, building meaningful relationships, and achieving the future we see for ourselves. In July of 2021, I sold all my possessions, headed west, and began a quest to live a fuller and more meaningful life. The experience helped me truly understand the power of a single moment. And through my conversations with leaders from all walks of life, I've seen how that one phone call, heartbreak, diagnosis, or lost job can transform the entire course of our lives. In this podcast, I sit down with entrepreneurs, influencers, and experts across industries to talk through the events that changed everything. Together, we'll relive the make or break decisions, hard conversations, periods of despair and hope, chance encounters, and everything that followed. Julie Rosenberg is an experienced pharmaceutical consultant with a demonstrated history of successfully leading global oncology, pediatrics, and biosimilar drug development programs. She's a highly skilled corporate leader, keynote speaker, and author of both medical literature and nonfiction. Her books, Beyond the Mat and Be True, show leaders how to lead more consciously and provide guidance on how they can successfully support themselves and others in times of uncertainty, challenge, and change. She is an honored member of the esteemed Marshall Goldsmith 100 Coaches, a group of senior business leaders whose collective mission is to inspire, develop, and energize leaders for the future. Julie's unique approach supports not only better business results and workplace success, but also good health and well-being. When Julie was a child, a piece of advice from her father dramatically reshaped her worldview and made her rethink where she was going. Listen to how this moment changed the trajectory of her life on The One Away Show. Julie, welcome to The One Away Show.
Thank you, Brian. It's great to spend time with you here, and I'm excited to be on the show.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So, Julie, what is the one away moment that you want to share with us today?
I think the one away moment for me actually occurred earlier in my life, actually during my childhood, and it influenced how I look at the world as well as the entire trajectory of my career. And I think it actually impacted my overall personal and professional success. I grew up in an upper middle class family. My father was an educator. He was a high school principal and an English professor. And I grew up with my mom and one sister who's 2.5 years younger than myself. And I grew up at a time when not every woman, became a professional, and oftentimes folks may have decided against a highly competitive professional career path. But I think the advice my father gave me and my sister, I would put that as the one away moment. And he said to me, whatever you do, you need to ensure that you stand on your own 2 feet and you make a path for yourself. And that is what I have done. So I think it has led really to all the decisions that I have made in my life and actually how I live my life.
That's some wise words. I remember you shared that with me when we first met. For you, Julie, what was it about standing on your own 2 feet? What did that symbolize for you, and why did that take such a hard route?
Again, I grew up in an era where there weren't as many higher level professional women or a trajectory from high school to college to graduate school. And I think for me, I was always very interested in medicine for the majority actually of my life. So I had a somewhat of a singular focus. What I would actually do in medicine evolved over time, but my interest in medicine occurred at a young age. But it's a hard road, and it's very costly to be educated. I mean, I think as you're probably aware, this involves college 3 or 4 years of college, getting a college degree. Then thereafter, it's 3 or 4 years of medical school. Then there's an internship, a residency. In my case, there was a fellowship, and there was some increased concentration on bone marrow transplant at the time. So I went through a really challenging road in order to sort of set the foundation for my career. And I think that type of vision, if you will, gave me the confidence and drive to go through all that to get to the other side. And so I just didn't lose sight of the idea that I wanted some independence. I wanted an opportunity to have a robust career. And whatever I did with my personal life, I determined that I could sort it out, if you will, and also have a robust career professionally as well. And so I didn't have any sense of confusion, if you will, that I could do both. And we're talking about, a situation where I grew up mostly in the 80s and 90s. And I think, nowadays, many, many women have professional careers and manage families too. But at that time, I would say there weren't as many. And I just wanted to have the confidence, and did have the confidence, that I could manage both of those things and do it well.
Seems like you took a lot of self kind of ownership of your personal situation around who you wanted to be and the example that you wanted to set as a woman in your career and for your future family. Now, a question for you. You talked about or alluded to being a woman and standing on your own 2 feet as a woman and maybe defying traditional gender roles at the time. What was your experience with your mother growing up?
So my mom was a social worker. She was, a graduate of Wellesley College and had advanced training in social work at the University of Wisconsin. She did work part-time though, as I was growing up. So she did not work a full schedule. As I got into high school and my sister started high school, she went back to work more of a full-time schedule, but did not do so as I was growing up. So I did not have a two-family kind of working model. But as I mentioned, I did have my father, who was an educator, and part of his focus on education, not just for me, but for all of the students who were at the high school where he was the principal. And then, as I said as well, he also taught college English, was for those students to take the material that they learned and to use it to further not only their education, but a career path. So I was really surrounded by that in my family. Although, again, my mother did not work throughout my entire life, more so later as we became more independent. But that sense of using your education to a positive end was reinforced like all the time.
It's neat that, and maybe as not that your mother sounds like your mother set a good example from a work ethic perspective and a values perspective and what she represented in education. It sounds so, and from what you said, standing on your own, like what I know about you just from our conversations, like you have made a total like career, like a big career for yourself in the health space and all the things. Like, did you feel as a child or growing up there was more for you financially or more you wanted to achieve for yourself from a financial prospering perspective?
Well, I think first and foremost, I mean, I've really been dedicated to the field of medicine. So I think dedication and a certain groundedness and expansiveness, in the medical field, trying to be flexible and versatile. And my training was in pediatrics, pediatric hematology and oncology, but as well, I went back to school for marketing and management to support the trajectory of my career, which has included both academic medicine and the pharmaceutical industry, as well as being a coach to folks in terms of making lifestyle choices that support careers in medicine and in the pharmaceutical industry without burnout. So that being said, to try to more directly answer your question regarding a financial vision, I do think that if one can do it, and has been my focus, amassing a certain amount of wealth throughout a career, but not to the exclusion of serving others and valuing the work you're doing yourself, is a great thing to be able to give you flexibility and a sense of accomplishment throughout your career. So I've been able to, enjoy things like that I like to do, such as travel in various places in the world, because I was able to set forth on a path that did allow me to make, a good living along the way. And I've really appreciated the flexibility and the time to take some breaks in my career and also to serve my family financially and to be able to manage a residence and some vacation property and things like this that I might not have otherwise been able to do. But again, I feel like the financials of this came secondary to a commitment of trying to manage my career and expand my career in the best way that I knew how to do.
Yeah. Totally, totally. And I guess what you're saying is it wasn't so much there was a financial driver, but there was you wanted to set yourself up in a way where you could push yourself to do whatever you wanted. And the financial side of the benefit was a byproduct of doing that work well and kind of giving yourself a chance to do that.
I think so. I mean, nowadays, and even at that time, medicine is a very expensive career path. I'm sure, as you know, Brian, many people are in debt for many, many years when they go to medical school, and it's hard to dig out. And I would say for people who are focused more specifically on the financials, this is not a good career path. It's too difficult, it's too long, and it's very challenging. But I still have never looked back myself on the choice to go into medicine. And while my career was not too windy, it was a bit windy, covering both academic medicine, the pharmaceutical industry, and now more recently biotech. But I wouldn't have changed it. And I think when you are really committed to what you're doing, more shall come. And I think that is where the financials do play into it. I think it's that commitment and doing the job well. And it doesn't matter if you're in medicine or something else. I just believe if you're really focused and have that vision and follow it and do it well, more will come.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the commitment and the explanation around kind of what, how you've applied yourself, right? It seems like that work ethic and determination at anything you've applied throughout all that you've done. For you talked about really standing on your own 2 feet. What was it about medicine and the interest in medical space and field that said, this is where the niche I want to go into to stand on my own 2 feet?
I would say I grew up in a family where there were a number of physicians and scientists, and a number of folks in general who were well educated. So I did have that opportunity growing up to be around individuals with diverse educational backgrounds and scientific or medical backgrounds. And I did have a paternal uncle who kind of mentored me. He was a PhD chemist and worked for one of the big chemical companies. And I became very interested in the sciences at the time, sort of the mechanics of the human body. And I always thought biology and chemistry and things like this, even math, were really fascinating. And, I saw a number of people in my family and around me. They got ill, and usually they got better with medical help. And I had good rapport with my physicians. And I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, where there was very good medical care, as well as a excellent medical institution, Washington University, where I was able to do some early preceptorships and even volunteer as a high school student. So I was always really interested in medicine, and I was fortunate enough to be accepted then in high school to a 6-year combined medical program through the University of Missouri. So I was able to do college and medical school in a 6-year time frame. And then following that, I went to Baylor College of Medicine for my residency and hematology oncology fellowship. So, recognizing my interests at a younger age were helpful in being able to complete the bulk of that training still at a relatively young age when I was in my later 20s. So I had a pretty focused path, and that's unlike many. Some people take more time, they might do more things. I'd say I gave up some things. I gave up my summers. I might have given up at the time some travel opportunities, but I made my way and finished early. And I think it was kind of that early trajectory, that early vision, if you will, and that focused trajectory that helped me to do so. That's not for everybody, but in my case, it seemed to be a good way to start my career early. And so by the time I was 28 years old, I actually had a full faculty position at a major university.
It's interesting how it seems like your family was a guide, or you kind of had let's just say, the genes passed down. It was in your blood to go into the space and kind of have that natural thinking and skill set. But I'm sure it didn't come without a lot of hard work and expertise and things that you picked up on your own. So thanks for sharing the context and backstory. Julie, one of the things that I think is so interesting about you and just the conversations that we've had is, you've talked a lot about working on in your career, and we can go into it on the side of health with drug development. But when we talked, you talked a lot about the preventative side of health and what happens before you have to start taking all the drugs, and really having an understanding of the continuum on both sides. Why you picked the interest in drug, kind of how the career developed in drug development first, because I would really like to understand that, and then also understand like what's really made you interested in the preventative side. I know that's a loaded question, so we can separate it, but I think it's important to kind of cross both chasms as we dive in.
Well, first and foremost, I can talk a little bit about drug development. So as we've discussed, my career for the most part has been in drug development. I spent the first 6 years of my career in academic medicine, and then I transitioned into drug development. And the reason I did that is I really like the clinical research side. I like the challenges of drug development. I like the idea of being somewhat entrepreneurial, but I also like the global reach of drug development because I've been really interested in working in various regions around the world and in understanding different cultures around the world. So I worked through most of my career at several major pharmaceutical companies in various leadership roles, primarily in clinical development. But more recently, since 2019, I've been a consultant to a variety of biotech companies, which is how we were fortunate enough to meet in person, actually, as I recently visited the Palo Alto area and one of my clients there. I've been fortunate enough to work in biotech as an advisor, or actually a part-time team member in a variety of capacities, anything from clinical development, medical monitoring, through interim chief medical officer. I've just tried to be very facile as biotechs need to be very facile, and they need to be nimble, and often don't have the resources to hire the best folks internally. So the reason I did that again is I had business acumen. I was creative. I'm probably very far on the creative side in medicine. I really wanted the global reach, and I really liked the challenges of drug development. So that's how I evolved my career from academic medicine into drug development. But then I also realized how expensive it is to develop drugs. So the drugs that I've developed and worked on and or led FDA and or global submissions have all been oncology products or biosimilars. And these products are very expensive to develop. When you develop them, it is typically in patients, just the development pathway is in patients who have advanced disease, in this case, advanced cancers. And so much of cancer in the world is due now in adults. I'm speaking about primarily rather than in children, but it's due to lifestyle choices. Probably over 80%, 85% is due to our lifestyle choices. We as a society make bad choices. There is still smoking. There is overuse of alcohol. There is rampant overweight and obesity. We don't take care of ourselves. We have sedentary lifestyles. Despite everything that we know and hear and read about how to be healthy. Then on top of that, we often buy things that support our good health, but then we fall back in bad habits. And I would like to do what I can to prevent disease. And I feel like I have the knowledge base wherewithal and try to set an example health-wise of doing that. So in our careers, in addition to all the things I just mentioned, we have rampant burnout. We have too much stress. We are not taking care of ourselves. And so we've got this cyclical problem of, we see it out there, how to be well, but yet we might be well for a moment in time and then fall back into bad habits. How can we have better habits so people like me aren't spending all their time in their careers developing drugs for the very, very sick? We could spend more time supporting people toward healthy longevity, which is something I'm very interested in doing. So I do see a role for myself probably throughout my lifetime in helping the sick. Don't get me wrong. That's what I've done for most of my career. But it is unfortunate that so many are so sick. So what can we do as a medical society, if you will, and what can I do as an individual to help people be more well and to lead themselves to more conscious living and better health as they go through their lives, as they develop their careers, and even beyond, as they retire and move toward retirement years. I'd like people's health span to be equivalent to their lifespan, and now it often is not. So that's what sparked my interest in leadership of oneself, more conscious living, and the coaching arena, where I'd like to help people make lifestyle choices that will support their good health and well-being and help to prevent burnout as they build a career and as they move through that career.
One of the things that you were talking about was we're overweight. We live sedentary lifestyles. We're getting disease all the time. What has led to this lifestyle that has created such disease? Because I'm sure, as you're saying, I'm working to get these drugs developed to help people who are sick, but you're looking at the conditions of what's led to it to drive the interest in the preventative side. Like, why have we become so unhealthy as a culture, and from your perspective?
I think in general, we are enticed as a society with things and with opportunities, if you will, that don't support our good health. Okay, so For example, there's fast food all around us, and many people partake. And in our very busy work settings, oftentimes we don't take the time to bring a healthier lunch, or we don't take the time to eat a good breakfast. We don't take the time, and I'm talking about nutrition now, to eat mindfully. And, there's a whole situation now where the cost of food in many areas is very high. And so we're not necessarily eating foods that support our good health. And in many cases, we can't afford it. So this is a loaded question, Brian. I mean, it has very, very deep roots, just talking about the nutritional part of it in very brief. This is a whole multi-series podcast, if you will. But just to touch on it here and touching on the inactivity, we as a society often work too much. We are focused on the bottom line. We need to make money. We don't take a lot of breaks. And, we have to be creative to be able to exercise, move our bodies through the day. We have to want to feel better, and we need to see the fruits of our exercise pay off, with weight, with looking well, with doing well, with feeling better. But it's not easy. And you got to be creative, and you got to have a schedule to fit it in. And we all have so many demands. And then here recently, everyone was impacted by COVID-19. And while COVID-19 has fallen so much to the background now here in 2024, it's not gone. So we still need to be mindful of it. But nevertheless, during the COVID era, of course, we were all at home and bad habits became even worse. So I think this requires a real focus on health and well-being. It requires a knowledge base. It requires flexibility. It requires self-prioritization and self-care. And it requires an ongoing and daily focus on one's health. And not everyone does, can, or will look at it this way. It's the way that I myself move through the world. So if people want to do this, I can help them to do it, and people like me. But I think you got to want to do it. You got to see the results of doing it, and you got to like doing it, or you'll fall into bad habits. And this is, I think, part of the problem. So how can we be healthier as a nation? And just one other point about this, the stress of our environment, the war in Ukraine, the war between Israel and Hamas, the current political strife within the United States. Again, I could go on and on and on, but without doing more than just making a statement of facts about these things. These type of stressors or environments, they do dictate people's behavior. And it is important to have knowledge and awareness, but to find ways not to be driven to bad habits by the things in our environment that are difficult for all of us, myself included, to contend with. And that's another learned skill.
Julie, I mean, thanks for the context. I kind of agree more. I mean, when you look outside and you kind of see how people are living or what they're eating or kind of what they're doing in their car, you start asking all the questions on, oh, this makes sense. But for you, let's talk, if you don't mind me asking, kind of how do you live in a way that's healthy all around? I mean, from our conversations we've had, it seems like health stems beyond exercise and what you put in your body, but everything in the way you kind of move through life. Like, what is your kind of health preventative lifestyle, and what's that look like on a weekly, daily, monthly basis?
Well, first of all, let me say, just to have kind of some credibility in this space, I'm anything but perfect. And I will share again with you, I think we've talked about this briefly. A year and a half ago, September of 2022, I lived as my primary residence on Sanibel Island. I was severely impacted by Hurricane Ian, both personally and financially. As many people are aware, Ian was a Category 5 hurricane that really devastated Sanibel Island, and the work to build back has been very, very challenging. Many issues with insurance. I sold my home there at a significant loss and have had a fair amount of stress related to doing that. So I want to say that doing this work is a lifelong effort. It's not easy, and you can easily fall back into bad habits at times of stress like this. And I felt a lot of stress and anxiety myself since that time. So I just want to be clear about that. But in trying to do life right, if you will, or live in a healthful manner, what I have created for myself is a business schedule now. And I do work as a consultant, so I have a little more flexibility, but not a lot. It's a business schedule that allows me some free time in the mornings when I exercise. I often do yoga or meditate. I try to eat a decent and healthy breakfast, and I try to take some time for myself before I start work. During my work day, I try to make a conscious effort to get up from my desk, to take a short walk, to stretch, to get outside, if only for a little bit. I almost always eat lunch. I try to eat a healthy lunch. I try to plan it in advance, whether it's in or out. I try to eat with others when I can to have a little break. And if I eat by myself, I try to eat mindfully, thoughtfully, and not at my desk.
Hmm.
And I also try to eat, dinner with my family, or if I go out, try to watch the choices. I limit my alcohol intake, and I limit my intake of, highly caloric fatty foods, and I try to eat until I'm not stuffed or overly full. So I'm eating smaller meals, at least 3 times throughout the day. And I try to eat more slowly and mindfully so that it helps me to maintain a healthy weight. Also, we haven't talked about sleep, but I do try to go to bed at a reasonable hour.
Hmm.
And I think that, nowadays sleep is on people's minds. I went through my residency when I was up every third night. This is no longer allowed for medical students or residents, but I was up all night every third night. It was horrible for sleep-wake cycles. And so now I do try to sleep at least 7 hours a night and have restful sleep. And I think that for everybody is rejuvenating and helps all aspects of your health. So again, it's not perfect. I'm under a lot of stress, as so many people are. I do work essentially still a full schedule, even though I'm working as a consultant. And sometimes there's uncertainty in the consulting world. Business is not guaranteed. You have to earn the business. So that is a potential stressor. But nevertheless, I try to have a foundation that gives me a sense of groundedness and stability as I move through the world. And this is what I share kind of with folks in my coaching practice to help them live more of a conscious lifestyle, which I believe helps to support good health and well-being and prevent burnout.
Seems like you have 15 different things every day that you do to, keep your stress as low as possible. But you sound like, even though you're not perfect, it sounds pretty dialed in to me.
Well, I think I'm dialed in, but again, living healthfully and living consciously is a choice.
Hmm.
I like it. I like the way I feel. I like the way it supports my health, and it serves me well. I can't say for sure that it's for everybody, but I think everybody should at least consider it, because I think that it really does support health and well-being in a way that's meaningful and that supports healthy longevity. And what I was saying earlier helps so that your health span is equal to your lifespan. And hopefully in later years, one won't be sick. I mean, for myself, I don't want to live sick and debilitated. I want to be able to do things and seize things and continue to travel and enjoy and be active as long as I possibly can. So I kind of always look at the longer term. I'd say one of my strengths is longer term thinking, visionary type of thinking. And so I'm not necessarily in the moment all the time, but I do recognize that all we really have is the present moment. So enjoy it now, do it right now, and hopefully doing so will pay off in the future.
Yeah. I relate a lot to that statement with you, Julie. No wonder we get along. But when you look at some of the things that you've worked on and some of the drugs you've helped develop, I mean, it seems like you've been involved in some pretty amazing work. What would you say are the top two or three things that you're most proud of that you helped enable or bring forth into the world that you had your handprints on?
I've really worked on, the work in the pharmaceutical industry and biotech is always a team effort. So I do want to acknowledge that, but I have worked on a number of drugs for breast cancer. And I think nowadays that many forms of breast cancer have become more chronic disease.
Mhm.
And so the ability of women to live, who are affected with breast cancer. And I should mention as well, a small percentage of breast cancer is seen in men. So it would be women and men, but mostly it's a disease of women. The ability to live a healthful and full life, even with a diagnosis of more advanced breast cancer, really has expanded as I've gone through my career trajectory. So that's been very exciting. I've also worked on a couple of drugs for prostate cancer, which is a disease, of course, exclusively of men. And same story, prostate cancer has become a more chronic disease. I think the focus of the entire medical world, if you will, on prevention and prevention of cancer, especially oncologists, but also your primary care physicians, getting screening tests and being mindful of preventive measures has helped in many ways to reduce incidence of cancer. So that's good, but yet unfortunately we still do see a lot of malignant disease. The other thing that I've been very involved in is some of the newer therapies, including immunotherapy, where we are harnessing individuals' own immune systems to better fight cancer cells. And this has been very exciting for me as well, because we have newer ways, other than some of the more toxic chemotherapies or targeted therapies that were developed initially. We have more ways of harnessing patients' immune systems now to fight cancer. So I think, these are some of the highlights in the areas that I have worked. And it's been exciting to see, some of the adult cancers as well as the childhood cancers, improve in terms of our ability to foster either disease stability or cure of these various types of previously life-threatening and life-limiting diseases. It's many, but not all. There's still a number of very serious diseases that folks can get that aren't necessarily equated with good opportunity for cure, but that number is less and less as we develop newer types of therapies and therapies that are less toxic to patients.
You've seen it from all sides, Julie. I mean, I've read a lot about the immunotherapies and it seems like fascinating innovation. I was even talking to a couple of people in Singapore last year doing some amazing work in the space there. And it seems like there's just so much development with technology and kind of what's possible to cure everything ahead. Julie, one of the questions that I had for you as I was thinking about after we had, we got together was, you know, you have this kind of care, like this deep care of like, as you talked about, like people aren't living healthy. You shared that your habits and routines for your own lifestyle around what you've done, but like how you want to in the future potentially be able to support people on a preventative journey in a more deeper and a richer way and kind of write and talk about those topics, right? To really support your work on the drug side. What does that, you talk about being a dreamer and in the future, like what does that maybe next chapter or the next few chapters look like for you as you are able to build on a body of work that is, really calling you at perhaps a soul level?
Well, I think, now my work life, if you will, is fairly full with drug development, but I have written two books, one in 2017, Beyond the Mat, Achieve Focus, Presence, and Enlightened Leadership Through Principles and Practice of Yoga. And I'm trained as a yoga, meditation, and mindfulness instructor, although I use these skills for myself and in my corporate journey rather than teaching on the mat or in a studio. The second book was Be True, which was written in 2019 and published at that time, and is really helping people with more of their journey toward authenticity.
Mm.
I have to acknowledge, Brian, that I didn't spend a lot of time marketing or promoting these books, but they are out there. And I do think that they're valuable resources to individuals in terms of living and leading healthier lifestyles and leading their lives in a more conscious way. That being said, I've considered writing more and spending more time doing that, and also doing more public speaking around sort of the trajectory that we've talked about today. I like to educate and motivate in corporate environments and in larger group environments. And I really do, as I said, enjoy the writing life. And if I can write more for major journals, if you will, whether they be business journals or health-related journals, I'd be interested in doing that. I did have a health column that ran for a couple of years in Sanibel Island and Fort Myers, and I think that column was well received. Unfortunately, during Hurricane Ian, the paper ceased production, and I'm not doing that at this time, but it was something that did allow me to have broad reach. But, in terms of doing that work, it is important for me to sense a value among the populations that I reach. And so I would like to be able to integrate more in ways and with corporations and with individuals who recognize the value of that work and really are committed to their own journey, whether it be the individual journey or their own journey. Since I like to work with founders and CEOs and the like, the journey of their companies in terms of the build, that health focus, is never far away.
I think, you have such a like open-minded, like when we chat, like it's such an open connected connection to speaking like from a place of personal experience, a place of experience on the drug side, but also like your routines as you've talked about today on the preventative side and what you do for yourself. And I think it's this kind of triangulation of skills and experiences and beliefs that you have. And clearly you've brought it into a couple of books, but also as you think about, the future, even though you're still involved on the drug side, I mean, it seems like there's still such an amazing impact that you can have on an individual level. So to piggyback off what you just said, I know when you were telling me, sometimes people reach out to you and they work with you for like 6 weeks, right? If they want to really get some support on the preventative side. What does that look like?
Well, basically, I just try to help folks. It could be 6 weeks or it could be 6 months, but I'm certified as a Marshall Goldsmith stakeholder-centered coach. And, as I said earlier, as a yoga, meditation, and mindfulness instructor who has lived the life of conscious living and led the life of conscious leadership throughout my career. And so I basically work sort of across the business domains to assist people who might be facing burnout or health challenges or just some dissatisfaction in their career, or people who just want to augment their careers who aren't experiencing those things, to live and lead more consciously. And so I like to touch upon, people's lives, understand their lives better, and touch upon the various aspects that we've been talking about today, nutrition, exercise, mindful and conscious living, mindset, and just managing through stress related situations, at least those 5 topics in a 6-week program. And of course, the six week is just getting to know the individual, giving people good skills across the board to work with so that they can come out and feel that they've got tools to move forward. And then if they need a certain amount of support beyond 6 weeks, then I'm always happy to provide that. So really, to me, that's an hour a week, but 50-minute, I should say, but about an hour a week commitment, that someone has with me, typically by Zoom, to work on those things. And to me, it's, I'm obviously completely biased, but I think it's priceless and I think everyone should do it. But again, it's a personal choice and it's a personal commitment, but I can certainly help with those foundations.
Well, Julie, this was such a treat to have you on today and talk about the breadth and depth of your experience, the impact that you're having in the world, how you want to keep having an impact in the world. Where can people find you online, reach out to you? What's the best place?
Probably the best way is to look at my website, which is drjulierosenberg.com, or to reach out by email at julie@drjulierosenberg.com. And I appreciate, any inquiries, and I do have a busy schedule, but I will do my best to get back to anyone who reaches out directly and personally.
Sounds good. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Brandon. Pleasure to be on. And as always, great to chat with you.
Thank you for joining me on the One Away Show. If you enjoyed this episode as much as I did, please leave a review and follow us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Have a one away moment you'd like to share? Follow me on Twitter or Instagram at BrianWish_, or reach out to me on LinkedIn and tell me about the moment that altered your life. The One Away Show is produced by Arcbound, a company dedicated to helping entrepreneurs, experts, and visionaries launch authentic personal brands. From message development to podcast production, social media content generation, and book writing, we work with you to create your arc. Head to arcbound.com to learn more. Thank you for listening, and please join me next time on The One Away Show.